Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror fiction slashers, because today we are going to be talking specifically about slashers. Usually in my intro, if you guys are new here, I usually say we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but today we're not talking about horror movie slashers, we're talking about slashers in book form, and I'm really pumped because this is going to be a very fun recommendation video filled with books that I have read and that I haven't read. The one thing they have in common, they are all slasher books. So without further ado, let's go to the short intro, and when we come back, we'll get into the slashing. Welcome back, guys! Okay, so, why am I talking about slasher books? Is this just a random recommendation video? No, bitch! And I mean bitch in a nice way, of course, because I'm always saying that for some reason. But I am talking slashers because I am announcing right here, right now, that I'm going to be doing a big slasher readathon and watchathon next month in June. So I hope you guys will join me. This is a very loose readathon theme and a loose watchathon theme as well. You can participate in one, the other, both. If you don't want to watch movies, then don't watch movies. If you don't want to read books, don't read books. But today we're specifically talking about horror books. Just wanted to say though that my big event is, both thematic for movies and for books. But I will have a lot of book recommendations here, and then in another video I'll probably have some movie recommendations down the line. But guys, again, this is very loose. I'm calling it my Summer Slashers Readathon and Watchathon. There will be an official hashtag if you guys want to post about what you're reading for the month on Instagram. Use the hashtag Slime Summer Slashers. So Summer Slashers was already taken on Instagram, but Slime brings in my channel name, so Slime Summer Slashers with an S. Then no one's using it, so we're using it, so let's go. That's what we'll use to post our book reads and all of that. So if you want to join in, shout it out on Instagram. Okay, so a little bit about this video. As I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about a few books that I've read, and those I will give my in-depth recommendation. And then the second part of the video, I'll talk about some books that I have not read, but that I have researched. They are slasher books. I actually have a huge list that I made up. It's a Google Doc list. I will link it in the description below for anybody. What it includes is flipping Goodreads links for every single book. It also includes the publishing year, so the year that the book was originally published, and it includes highlighted sections for any books that are free on Kindle or free if you have Kindle Unlimited. So anything highlighted in yellow on my Google Doc means that it is free if you have Kindle Unlimited, and in other cases, rare cases, it's just free on Kindle. Put this list together, it took forever, so hopefully you guys find it helpful. It's not in alphabetical order, but it is in an order. Books I recommend that I have read on the first page, on the second page, books that I would love to read with you guys as my book club pick. So yes, part of this video is asking what you guys want to read for our official club read. If you guys didn't know, I run a book club on this YouTube channel called the Midnight Book Society, and we pick a book or two, usually two, to read every month. People can choose to read one, both, or neither if they're not feeling it. But I usually put out a big poll, and the two top winners I usually choose as my official reads. However, I don't have too many suggestions out there for this slasher themed month for June, so I'm going to suggest a few books for you guys, and you guys second them below in the comments if you want to read them together. That's how we'll do it. So we'll get into that in a second, but let's just talk about the books I have read that I will recommend to you right now. First up is Taste Like Candy by Ivy Tholen, and I'm so excited to recommend this to you guys because I read this as part of my other readathon I did earlier this year. Was all about carnivals and clowns and fairs. Really, this fits in with the carnival theme. It actually takes place at a Halloween carnival, but I didn't realize going into this read that this was going to be a slasher book. This book was so much fun. It was funny, it was heartfelt, it was gut-wrenching, it had some unique really creative kills. And so for that reason, I give this book my highest recommendation. In fact, I would say this is my favorite slasher book. Last year, I'm going to tell you about another book that was a favorite from last year, but since I've read this one, this is my new top favorite slasher book. It was published not that long ago in 2020, and it's just really, really well done. And I mean, look at the cover. I mean, do you need more of a reason? Also, it's on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Kindle Unlimited, it is free to read right now. I just think not enough people are talking about this, and I don't know why that is. Maybe because it doesn't look like it's a slasher. Also, maybe because people think it's a YA book, and there are teenage characters in here, and there's a group of girls, and we do spend a little bit of time in the beginning of the book getting to know them. However, when they go on the scavenger hunt in said Halloween carnival, like I mentioned, that's when the slashing takes place, and it gets crazy. I mean, some of the images in this book, like the imagery specifically, it's really intense and just very, very well done. I am so happy I read this, and yeah, this would be my favorite slasher right now. I definitely recommend it if you have not read it yet. My next recommendation is Under the Blade by Matt Serafini. This was one of my favorite reads. It was definitely in my top 10 reads of last year, 2021. And so, of course, I have to recommend it when I'm recommending slasher books. This is really special because this book is not your basic slasher. There is more going on in the story than just a typical slasher book. There is some complex stuff happening here, and I love that. So basically we do have a final girl type of situation. This girl survives a big camp massacre, and she goes to live on her life. So many years later, she's working as a professor, but for certain reasons having to do with her job, she's going to have to go back and visit the place of the massacre, which she was the only survivor of. So she's got to go travel back to the small town, and she's going to write a book about it. And it's not because she just wants to get rich, there's a particular reason why she wants to write this book, which really was very believable to me, the whole reason why she would even go back to where this traumatic stuff happened to her. So yeah, I just really liked the main character. I liked a lot of different things going on in this novel. I don't want to say too much and spoil it. I just give this one a really high recommendation. This year, I did read another book by Matt Serafini called Rites of Extinction, and honestly, I didn't like it as much as Under the Blade. I think Under the Blade was like a perfect read. Rites of Extinction, I loved the second half, didn't like the first half. But yeah, this one you can't go wrong if you're in a slashery mood, and if you're participating in the Readathon and haven't checked it out, yes. And if you like, in addition to slasher books, if you like summer camp themed books, this one matches that theme as well. Because last year, the whole reason I read this, I did this whole big summer camp readathon where I read like at least 10 to 12 summer camp themed books. And I do have a video up right now talking about each book and reviewing each book for that little readathon from last year. So I will link that above and below if you guys want to check it out. Really proud of that video. In the beginning, I spoofed the movie The Parent Trap. Anyway, you just gotta see it. Lots of fun. Highly recommend this book. And by the way, this is on Kindle Unlimited as well. Speaking of summer camp horror, and I mentioned that video I did, one of the books I talked about in that video and that I read last year for that readathon was Fat Camp by James Sabata. Fat Camp, it's so good. There's a lot of emotion in here, and that's why I like to recommend it as a unique type of slasher. It's not your typical brainless slasher. There are some emotional things that take place in here. You've got the slashing taking place, of course, at summer camp because it fit my summer camp vibe, but it's not just any old summer camp, it's a fat camp. And it examines, body issues and confidence, but also it has that fun, gory slashing stuff that you want to see in a fun slasher as well. So yes, highly recommended if you want more than just a mindless slasher. Another book I read for that summer camp video last year was Kill River. This is actually a trilogy of books. I have only read this first book as of now, but yes, I did talk about this book in depth in that summer camp video. This would be a decent slasher if you like character development. I do think it takes a little while for the slashing to take place, but come on, look at this amazing cover. This book is by Cameron Robique, and this first book was released in 2015, so it is a little bit older, so some of you might have already read it. But for those of you who have not and like character development, then I would suggest this. And you might be asking, why was this a part of your summer camp video? The cover looks like a water park. Yes, there are parts of the book that take place in a water park. However, a big part of the novel takes place at summer camp. That's where these group of friends meet up and they go on an adventure down a river and they wind up in and an abandoned flippin' water park, and that's where the slashing happens. So yeah, like I said, it does take a little while for things to occur, but I really loved, personally, the character development. Another slasher-ish book, but not a very typical slasher, in that we follow this main character, who is a killer. However, he's a good guy killer. If you're familiar with the show Dexter, I am talking about the book series that the show is based on. Darkly Dreaming Dexter is the first book in the series, and there are 8 total books. I have only read this first one. This is by Jeff Lindsay, and I will say I did enjoy reading this and comparing it to the show because I love the show, starring Michael C. Hall, who you see here on this cover. So the show's really good. This is a little bit different, but still very similar. I hear as the books go on, I think it's quite different from the show, if I'm remembering correctly. But yes, if you like the show Dexter, why not check out the books? Again, it's 8 books long, the whole series. I did like this first one, and this was published, the first one, in 2004. The next book I'm going to suggest, I do not have a physical copy of, but I did read it last year. I checked it out from the library, luckily, because it is very hard to find because it is out of print. But I am still recommending it in case you guys can find it through your library system or even through your interlibrary loan system. That's how I found mine. So my local library didn't have it, but the system that my library is in and trades books with did have it, so that's how I found it. At the time, the book was selling on Amazon for like hundreds of dollars. As of today, May 14th, I checked this morning, there are no physical copies available on Amazon, but like I said, if you're interested and intrigued, check out your library. They may have it. Mine did, and that was awesome. So the essential premise is we've got these kids going to a Bible summer camp, so that's why I read it, of course, more books that I read for that summer camp video I did last year, and it was really good. It was not my favorite read of my little readathon last year, I will say that. I don't think it's worth spending a ton of money on or fretting over if you cannot find it, because people really made this book out to be like it was amazing, like it was so good, like you can't beat this as a slasher. I don't think that's necessarily true. I do think it's unique because the slashing takes place at a Bible camp, and perhaps that's where all the hype comes from. However, do not get me wrong, it is worth reading. Next slasher book that I'd like to recommend to you guys was a book I read last year, just randomly, I think in the summertime. This is The Sandman by Miles Gibson, and it's a very weird, very unique slasher book. It is a little bit older. This is a vintage copy that I ordered online, and it's might be difficult to find. I can't remember. I might have seen it on Kindle, actually, but I would say it's worth tracking down if you like character development. I do feel like there's like a lot of dark and weird humor in here, and that's why I liked it. The main character, whose nickname is Mackerel, by the way, because he looks like a fish, and his family used to call him Mackerel, he is very odd. So you're following him, and he is the killer, and it's almost like you're reading the diary of a killer, in that you're getting the perspective of a killer, so you're getting everything in his mind and what he's thinking, and you don't know what to believe, though. Sometimes it feels like he's an unreliable narrator in terms of Mackerel, the main character. So I don't know, I really thought this was unique and weird and different and almost elegant in a way, in the way that it was written. I can't really explain what I mean by that, but I will say it wouldn't be for everybody because it's not, you know, gore from cover to cover. It's kind of got a little bit, like I said, humor and a little bit of character development and a little bit of like oddness where you don't know what to believe, you know, here or there. Also, there's this one part that repeats that I found kind of weird. It was in the beginning and then it repeated in the end. I'm like, why is this like the same exact words in the beginning and in the end? But then I kind of figured it out. Anyway, that did not hinder my enjoyment. In fact, I still gave this a 5-star rating on Goodreads. So yeah, clearly I think it was a good book, and if you're looking for something odd and out there, then yeah, I recommend this. Now here's a book that I think that there is a little bit of a disagreement on in terms of ratings. No one really seems to agree on this. I, however, personally love this book, and this is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, and it was just really awesome, very meta slasher story. I don't think the book's strength is the actual slashing or gore or killing that takes place. I think it's the discussion about slashers and slashers in society and pop culture and why people actually like slasher villains and horror movie villains. Why are they so popular with people? And so this takes like a meta look at that within a fictional story, of course. And so I just really loved it. I thought it was very smartly written. Not everybody's favorite. Grady Hendrix novel. In fact, not everybody even likes it. But, you know, I will say it's not my favorite Grady Hendrix book. That goes to My Best Friend's Exorcism, personally. I love that book. But this one was still enjoyable, and I did give it 5 stars last year when I read it. So if you're on the fence, look up some reviews, non-spoiler reviews, of course, and just make a decision for yourself. But again, I'm always a big proponent of, why don't you just read it and see if you like it type of deal. And that's what I always say to people, you know, it might not be your jam, and that's okay. But you could always just give it a chance and see, and if you're not liking it, you could DNF. Alright guys, I definitely though think you should give it a try. I personally loved it. Alright, and the last book I'm going to recommend is Last for a Reason. I do think this was decent, but it was not my favorite book, and I don't even think it's a complete, pure slasher book. So this is Children of the Dark by Jonathan Janz, and I did enjoy it. I read this last year for a book club read with my private book club, not my channel book club, which is open to anybody. My little Facebook book club, which is just a group of very small close friends, so small friends. They're not small in stature. It's a small group, I mean. Ridiculous. I can't even speak. So this is kind of like a dual monster type of book, creature feature, and slasher book. So there is one character who's kind of like a serial killer slasher on the loose, and he is pretty off-putting and disturbing, and there are some really cool gory scenes in this book, but I really think most of the gore takes place in terms of the creatures. That's what's going down, or the creatures, you know, they're wreaking havoc left and right. But if you're interested, I'd say give it a chance. I think the weak part of the book for me is the way it ended, very strangely, and I think it's because there's more to this story. I know there's more in this universe that Jonathan Janz has written. I just don't know if there is going to be, I think there actually is going to be a sequel coming out to this that picks up where this one has left off, which would explain the weird ending and maybe go into depth about what happens after that. But I just didn't like the ending personally. But like I said, I never say don't read a book unless it's super horrible, but I have never specifically ever said that yet. I might one day, but this one, you know, if you're interested, give it a chance. Okay, those were my 9 recommendations for slasher books that I have read, and we're about to go into the part of the recommendation video of books that I have not read but that fit the theme, and books that I would like to suggest we read together as a book club. But before I get there, I just want to reiterate, these are my top 3 books that I suggest. Taste Like Candy, Under the Blade, and Fat Camp. These are the books that I think that anybody could like. You know, Sandman and the Final Girl Support Group, I gave both of those a 5-star, but I don't think that every single person would like those. These, I feel like universally, people would probably love it, or at least like them. So Fat Camp, I didn't mention, it does have some humor in it, as well as a lot of heart, and as well as gore. So it's got a lot of things going on. The one thing people might not like about this one is that there's some sophomoric humor, but it's like a group of boys at Fat Camp, and they're adolescents. So that's typical boy humor. It's in line with how boys would actually act at Fat Camp. So yeah, but these are like absolute perfection in my opinion. Now it's okay if you guys, you know, have read them and don't like them as much as me, but I really think these could be very good books for people to check out. Okay, so the next 13 books are the books I would like to nominate for your consideration for us to read together as a club. Again, we're talking about my book club, the Midnight Book Society. So what you do is, if you like the sound of a novel or more than one novel that I mention out of these next 13 books, then just comment below which book or books you'd like to read together, and the books that get the most shout outs in the comments will be put into the poll. So basically the top 4 or 5 books that get the most nominations, or seconds, I guess you could say, will wind up in that poll, and then everyone will vote in the poll, and then the top 2 will win, and that's what we'll read. So guys, you have to comment though, because if not, then I don't know what you guys want to put stuff into the poll. If not, I'll just have to pick random stuff, but please comment so I know what you guys would want in the poll. First up, Night Shoot by David Sodergren. So I read David Sodergren's The Forgotten Island last year and frickin' loved it. It was so gory and just bonkers. It definitely could be a movie. And oftentimes people say David Sodergren's work is very much like a movie in book form, and I love that personally. And that's why I think I love the slasher subgenre of books. Obviously, I like movies, so slasher books, it's like a movie in a book. And that's what I really enjoy. So I think that's what gets me going with this whole subgenre. Alright, so the premise of this is,
A group of desperate student filmmakers break into Crawford Manor for an unauthorized night shoot. They have no choice. Their lead actress has quit. They're out of time. They're out of money. They're out of luck. For Crawford Manor has a past that won't stay dead, and the crew are about to come face to face with the hideous secret that stalks the halls. Will anyone survive the night shoot?
And it says on the back, it's a delirious homage to the slasher movies of the 1980s. So, just sounds like a lot of fun. This is a suggestion. Vote below, comment below if you'd like this one. Next book I'd like to suggest is a meta slasher book that I found out about from Cameron Chaney. Of course, I'm talking about Library Macabre, the wonderful YouTube channel. I will link his channel below. He's one of my favorite people, and I really trust his book suggestions. I've really not disliked anything that I've discovered on his channel and then read, so I don't know, I'm kind of really wanting to read this regardless of if you guys want to read it as our club read or not, or one of our club reads. I don't care. Like, I'm gonna read this one regardless, I think. And that's a spoiler for my TBR, but oh well. The premise is
Liam Carpenter spends most of his time above his aunt's garage, watching obscure horror movies and drinking cheap beer. But this week's different. This week, things are getting weird. First, there's his favorite director, Clive Sherman, showing up in town unannounced. Then there's the string of murders that all seem like something out of Clive's popular Pigfoot movie monster franchise. Throw in Liam's mysterious new crush and the cough syrup addicted private investigator chasing her down, and you've got his life as of late. And don't even get him started on the she-demons and blood sacrifices. Bonesaw Studios is in town, and they're bringing you the bloodiest sequel featuring a pig-human hybrid killing machine you've ever seen.
So again, it's very meta, and just, it sounds like a lot of fun. I love meta things, so this is going to be a blast. Next up, a book that I have to read regardless because it's a shame and an atrocity that I have not read it yet. Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. I have read an Adam Caesar book. It was called Video Night, which I loved. I read that last year. It was a very good time. I can't believe I haven't gotten to this yet. I know it's a great slasher. People say it's appropriate for Halloween time. However, I kind of want to read it in the summer because it just feels slashery and appropriate and perfect for this readathon, and it's time to rectify the fact that I have not read this, so I'm going to make it happen. You guys don't have to vote for this one as our book club read. I know a lot of people have already read it. However, I'm just putting it here in case you'd like a discussion about it, even if you've already read it. So I'm definitely going to get to this no matter what, whether it wins or loses in terms of being nominated for the poll, but whatevs. It's going to be so much fun. I don't want to go into too much about what it's about, necessarily, because a lot of people already know what it's about. So it's going to be a good time. I cannot flip and wait, and the sequel is just around the corner. It's about to come out. This next book I suggest that we could read together is a book I want to get to regardless, and I know a lot of people have already read this one too, but this is Brother by Anaya Alborn, and one of my goals this year was to read a book by her because I've just heard fantastic things about her work, and so I've really got to actually read one of her books, and I've had this for quite a while, so it's time, but I just thought I'd throw it out there in case you guys wanted to second this as one of our picks.
Deep in the heart of Appalachia stands a crooked farmhouse miles from any road. The Moros keep to themselves, and it's served them well so far. When girls go missing off the side of the highway, the cops don't knock on their door, which is a good thing seeing as to what's buried in the Moro's backyard. But 19-year-old Michael Moro isn't like the rest of his family. He doesn't take pleasure in the screams that echo through the trees. Michael pines for normalcy, and he's sure that someday he'll see the world beyond West Virginia. When he meets Alice, a pretty girl, working at a record shop in the small nearby town of Dahlia, he's immediately smitten. For a moment, he's nearly forgotten about the monster he's become, but his brother, Rebel, is all too eager to remind Michael of his place.
Sounds like it's so good. Ugh, yes. The next book I'd like to recommend as a possibility for one of our book club reads is Reincarnage, Maximum Carnage. Now, I don't want people to get confused because this was released originally just as Reincarnage. And I thought when I was searching for this book that Reincarnage and Reincarnage Maximum Carnage were two different books. They technically are in a way. This is the newer edition, the re-released, updated edition of Reincarnage. So they're essentially the same story. This one has some bonus chapters and some extra, quote, carnage, hence the name, or the altered, updated name, Maximum Carnage. This is by Ryan Harding, and I'm really intrigued by this story.
You thought it was over. 11 people awaken in the abandoned motel. Transported from all over the United States, they have no memory of the journey and no idea where they are or why anyone would take them. Then they find the blood and the heads mounted on stakes. It's not over. 30 years ago in the town of Morgan, a Vietnam vet embarked on a killing spree that ultimately cost him his life. Then he resurrected to do it again, and again, and again. Morgan has since been evacuated by the government and enclosed by walls 30 feet high to contain the inhuman slayer known as Agent Orange. He came back. Now confined to his hunting grounds, the abducted must survive the kill zone where Agent Orange has traps and weapons stashed all around, an almost omniscient ability to stalk, and lifetimes to perfect the art of butchery with an endless canvas of human flesh.
It's kind of long, but it just seems like it's going to be a bloody good time. Here is the next recommendation for a possible book club read we could read together. Definitely a slasher book. This is Slash by Hunter Shea. I actually own another Hunter Shea book that I wish I would have read by now, but I have not. It's called Creature. And this says, The Wraith is back.
5 years after final girl Ashley King survived the infamous resort massacre, she's found hanging in her basement by her fiancé. She left behind clues as to what really happened that horrible night, clues that may reveal the identity of the killer the press has called the Wraith. With the help of his friends, her fiancé Todd goes back to the crumbling Hayden resort, now a ruin. The Hayden may have been deserted, but it was never empty of new corpses. Someone or something has been murdering anyone who dares to wander amidst its decayed buildings.
Next up is just a random book that I picked up last year, and I still have not read it. So that's why I'm suggesting it. I'm not really suggesting it in the sense that I really, really want to read this with you guys, or want to read this in general. I do want to, read it because I own it, but it does seem like a lot of fun. This is Babysitter Bloodbath by Regina Watts. Babysitting can be a real killer. Who said babysitting would be easy, says the back of the book. If you want a more extensive synopsis of some of these books, like some of them I'm going in depth on, especially the ones that I'm proposing we could possibly read. Others I'm going to breeze through. And again, you can find the Goodreads links in that document I told you guys about, linked below. So if you want further details, just click on the Goodreads link from my document, and then you could find the synopsis. So I'm not going to go in depth on this one. We've got a killer, we've got a babysitter, stuff ensues. It seems like a typical slasher, but that doesn't mean that it isn't going to be a fantastic time. Again, this is a lot of suggestions, so I know this is a lot of choices, but these are just general slasher suggestions regardless. And I think it goes with this whole recommendation vibe and theme of this whole video. So, Cirque Berserk by Jessica Guess is a book that I actually already owned for quite a while, and I do want to get to it. It's got a carnival vibe, which I should have read this for February for my carnival and fair and funhouse and clown readathon. However, I just had so much to read I did not get to this. But I will say it's kind of more on my radar after I heard Katrina Brown. Check out her YouTube channel. She is so much fun, so unique, so creative. I love her backdrop when she films. She's got a really cool bookcase with like really nice lights. But anyway, this is one of her favorite slasher books, and so I was like, maybe I should get to that sooner rather than later. So I'm suggesting it as a possibility for our book club. And yeah, it just seems like it's going to be a ball. Alright, the next few books are still suggestions for possibilities for us to read together, but I do not have physical copies of these yet. But I'm just going to go off my list here. So the next one I'm going to recommend is Larry by Adam Millard, and this was published in 2014. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and this one just sounds very zany. The synopsis says,
Between 1975 and 1978, Larry Pigface Travers terrorized Camp Diamond Creek, killing more than 100 horny stone teens, hacking them to death with his axe. The machete was already taken by some hockey guy over in New Jersey. Life couldn't have been better for a psycho slasher. But in 78, after being outwitted by that year's final girl, Pigface found himself trapped and a little bit on fire. Presumed dead, Larry Travers disappeared, but his legend lives on. It's 2014, now living in the woods with his overbearing and slightly antique mother, Larry's old enough to play bingo and enjoy jigsaw puzzles without feeling guilty. But the urge to kill has returned, and Larry thinks he still has what it takes to be a homicidal lunatic. Pigface is back. Trouble is, he's not as young as he used to be.
So this is almost like a slasher comedy type of book, and I think this could be worth reading for sure. Next book that I'd like to suggest that I don't own, Paradise Club by Tim Meyer. I'm thinking I'm going to read this no matter what. I did read a Tim Meyer book for my summer camp theme last year. It was called Kill Hill Carnage, and it was the bloodiest book I read for that whole summer camp readathon. There was so much blood and just random gross stuff in that book. It was insane, but it was a good time for sure. It was wild and action-packed. So, I've heard great things about Paradise Club. Why not? I already liked one of his books, and in addition, tons of people say, check it out, you need to check it out. I just feel behind on having read it. I am suggesting it as a possibility. However, I do know that many people have already read this, so I'm going to leave you guys the choice. Do you want to read it together or not? But regardless, I am excited to get to it because I think I might dig into this rather soon for the readathon. The next one I'd like to suggest is Pillow Face by Christopher Ruffty. And I know I'm suggesting like a shit ton, pardon my French, amount of books, but hey, all of these just sound so marvelous in different types of ways. This one I've heard is Layman-esque, as in Richard Layman-esque, so it's kind of got that Layman feel, which means, just a warning, it will not be for everybody. Richard Layman is notorious for having very disturbing elements in his books, lots of sex, over-sexualization in general of his characters, lots of gore, just absurd plot lines, etc., etc. But does that dissuade me from reading this? No, it makes me want to read it more because I actually like Richard Layman's style. It's kind of cozy in a trashy way, if that makes any sense at all. I think it does to me, but I don't know about you guys. This book, Pillowface, it seems like it could be a very unique read.
12-year-old Joel loves all things devoted to horror, movies, comics, books, and of course his true passion, special effects. Being raised by his older sister Haley after the sudden death of their parents, Joel is in a world truly of his own. But at the launch of summer vacation, Joel finds lying bloodied and near death in his backyard a masked man that is the epitome of what he adores, a flesh and blood slasher maniac. When he invites the masked man into his home to recover from his wounds, an unexpected friendship is born. But Joel quickly realizes he's actually become involved in a true-to-life horror tale that he'll be lucky to survive. This maniac known as Pillowface is not only an uncontrollable killing machine, but he also has others searching for him, and they will go to great and bloody lengths to find him.
Heck yes. Another suggestion for us, Abracadaver. So like abracadabra, but it's cadaver as in dead body. I just think that's very, very clever and cute. Cute in a horrific way? Whatevs. That's absurd. So this is by Matt Drabble, and this was published in 2013. And this is also on Kindle Unlimited. Actually, it's just free as a Kindle book, so that's good to know.
Tommy, Dixon, McEwen, PJ, and Allison were always a close-knit group until Tommy's 12th birthday party. Tragedy strikes when a magic trick goes horribly wrong and a woman lies dead. A local magician, Albert Trotter, is railroaded during a rigid trial and locked away, forever protesting his innocence, and after a vicious assault in prison, he is eventually sent to a mental institution in a catatonic state. Now Tommy is 36 and heading home for the first time in over 2 decades, but he's not alone. Someone is slaughtering the residents of Denver Mills with magic trick-themed murders and holding those involved with the Trotter trial in a steely grip of fear. Tommy will have to find the strength to bring his old friends together as secrets and lies are exposed throughout the small town of Denver Mills. Something evil is coming home, and they're bringing a whole new bag of tricks.
Oh my god. Yes. My last official suggestion for a possibility for our group read is Camp Ghoul Mountain Part 6, the official novelization by Jonathan Rabb, and that's spelled R-A-A-B. And this is kind of like a spoof and a funny type of slasher book. And this is a fake novelization. It's not a real novelization of any movie. There is no movie that exists that is Camp Ghoul Mountain Part 6. So it's very funny and also very meta from what I've read.
Camp Ghoul Mountain Part 6 is one of the most infamous slasher movie sequels of the 1980s, known for its over-the-top gore effects, bizarre and psychedelic campground killer plot, and its legacy as a lightning rod for conspiracy theories concerning everything from UFOs and alien abductions to 9/11 and a secret cabal at the heart of world power. This book contains a complete authorized adaptation of the infamous cult slasher movie, as well as the secret history of the behind-the-scenes drama and high strange events that inspired the filmmakers, complete with footnotes and anecdotes. Camp Ghoul Mountain Part 6, the official novelization, is a love letter to horror movie boom of the 1980s and conspiracy theories of the 1990s, and perhaps a dire warning of the dark future to come. Who wants to go camping?
That one just sounds out there and insane, and that is why I kind of like the idea of it, and that is why I'm suggesting it as a possibility. Alright, and from now on, from here on out, everything I have to say in terms of recommendations are all books I have not read, and that I don't necessarily want to suggest for a book club read. Feel free to also drop your own nominations in the comments if you have any other nominations besides the books I mentioned. But those just all sounded good, and that was 13 recommendations that we could possibly read together. And these next few are just books that are slasher books that you guys might want to check out and that I want to check out in the future as well because I have not read these, just to reiterate that one more time. And I'm not going to go through the synopses of these because I have the Goodreads links all in my Google document once again. Alright, first up, The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones from 2012. Very popular slasher book that a lot of people seem to love. Another book by Stephen Graham Jones that is a slasher-themed book that is relatively new, that I have not read yet, is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. There are mixed reviews about this book, but I know, just to reference Katrina again, she loves that. It's one of her favorite slasher books, and I actually have an extra copy that I'll be giving away. So if you participate in my slasher readathon using the hashtag #SlimeSummerSlashers, well then you could be entered in to win a copy of My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. Another slasher book recommendation, Final Girls by Riley Sager, very popular, published originally in 2017. Lots of people have read it, somehow I have not. Another suggestion, Joyride by Stephen Crye. I think you pronounce it like that. It's C-R-Y-E. This is such a rare book. It's one of my dream books that I would love to find in the wild. It's from 1983, and oh my god, I heard it's like the greatest slasher ever. Not maybe ever, but a really, really good slasher book. And I wish I owned it, but I don't. And it's very hard to find. There's no Kindle edition. So yeah, I'm just mentioning it here. If you're one of the lucky few who happens to own it, freaking read that thing, because I hear it's an awesome slasher book. Another recommendation of a book that I have not read but fits the theme of a slasher book is The Con Season by Adam Caesar, who, yes, also wrote Clown in a Cornfield, and I definitely want to get to this one at some point, but not only is it a slasher book, it is also a summer camp themed book. So if you like summer camp horror stories, this one has you covered because it takes place at an abandoned summer camp. Or actually, I'm sorry, at an off-season summer camp. It's not technically it's abandoned because there's no campers there, but yes, it's an off-season summer camp, and that's where the slashing takes place. So it just sounds so good, but I might wait to read this till August because I'm going to be doing like a cult and camp and clown themed readathon theme. It's not going to be an official readathon, it's just my personal theme for that month. So yes, cult books, camp books, and I'll be digging into that type of stuff in August. Another slasher book you could read for this readathon is Disco Death Trap. This takes place around New Year's, so I think I'm going to wait till New Year's time, like December, January, to read this, but I've heard so many good things about this. This is by Cameron Robeek, who wrote the Kill River trilogy of books. And also, just like that series of books, this one is another book with a fantastic cover, and Cameron Robeek does his own covers. How amazing is that? So incredible. I just heard so many marvelous things and wonderful things about this book, and I heard that it's gory, and I definitely want to get to it, but I want to wait till like December, January. But if you don't care when the book is set, then why don't you pick it up as part of the readathon? Another slasher book that would be perfect for this readathon, if you guys are looking for suggestions, is Camp Slaughter by Sergio Gomez. This was published in 2019, and I do want to read this one, but I don't own a copy, and I've got so many others that I physically own that I'd like to get to, but if you guys are looking for something, this one would fit the bill. And again, for the synopsis, look on my document. Another suggestion, My Pretties by Jeff Strand, also published in 2019. I love Jeff Strand, at least from the one book I read by him. I'm hoping I'm going to love all of his work. So he also wrote Clowns vs. Spiders, which I read for my Carnival readathon and Clown readathon because there were clowns involved, obviously, from the name. Oh my god, it was so funny and absurd, but also very gory and graphic and action-packed. But yeah, I gotta say, I recommend Clowns vs. Spiders if you haven't read it. It wouldn't match the slasher theme we're going for in June, but still, it'd be a perfect read for any time of year, and it's just a blast. It was definitely one of my favorite reads of this year so far. Will it wind up in my top 10? I don't know, we have to wait and see, but yes, I cannot wait to read more by Jeff Strand. Another book, The Great American Slasher by David C. Hayes, published in 2015. We've got Kane by Michael Prescott, aka he also wrote under the name Douglas Borton, a very notorious kind of gory splatterpunk type of writer, and that book was published in 1990 originally. The Last Final Girl series of books by Jack Quaid. It's 3 books, and each book begins with the words escape from, and again, each book has a different, escape from this, escape from that. And these were released in 2019. These are available on Kindle Unlimited. Then the next suggestion, Slasher, a Joshua Matthews thriller by W.D. Jackson Smart, published in 2014. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Psycho by Robert Bloch. Come on, a classic. Almost helped birth the whole slasher subgenre. Definitely an influence. We don't think of this when we think of slasher type of tropes like we see in Halloween, the movie that really brought slasher movies into the popular stratosphere. But this definitely has, especially the movie, has slasher elements. I have not read the book, and I will have to rectify that at some point, but I'm just, stacking up my TBR too high. I'm not going to get to it in June, but if you guys haven't gotten to it, it would be a good thing to pick up for sure. Next suggestion is a book by Jack Ketchum, and this is Cover. This one deals with another veteran type of situation going through all this trauma after war, and he thinks he's still in the war, and so he starts to kill people. I heard good things about it, but there's also mixed reviews in general on Goodreads. However, having read 2 Jack Ketchum novels and loving each of them and giving each of them 5 stars, I would totally be cool with picking this up at one point. I'm just not suggesting it as a book club read because I've already read 2 Jack Ketchum novels as part of my book club this year. That's a lot of Jack Ketchum, and not everyone likes him, so I will say I'm not going to nominate it or suggest that we read it, so I'm just going to say it would match with the slashing theme technically, if you guys are looking for more books to read. Alright, we're almost done. I know this recommendation video is long, but hey, it's thorough, and isn't that awesome? I don't think you guys would ever need to know about more slashers than this, but if I forgot something, feel free to comment it below. I know that I did not list every slasher book out there. That's fine. I mean, that's probably typical. I can't write every single slasher book that exists on this list, but if there's some that are notable that I have forgotten, please comment that below once again. So now let's talk about some seasonal slashers. If you guys want a Halloween slasher type of book to read, we've got Red Harvest by Patrick C. Green. This was published in 2018, and this was recommended to me by Cameron Chaney. Once again, another book recommended by Cameron, and I really trust his opinion, and this has mixed reviews on Goodreads. However, I think people don't expect this to be a slasher book, and it is a slasher type of book. And so if you know that going in, perhaps you'd enjoy it more than the people on Goodreads did. And I know Cameron enjoyed it, that's why he recommended it to me. It does sound like a lot of fun, and it takes place around Halloween time. Next up, another Halloween slasher book, All Hallows Dead by Brian Smith, published in 2015. This one sounds marvelous, and it's available on Kindle for free. Next up, another Halloween slasher, The Face of Midnight by Dan Padavona, published in 2016. And I've only got one Christmas slasher here, even though technically I do think you could count the Fear Street book Silent Night as a slasher type of book, because there is killing involved, and it is fun. A lot of Fear Street have kind of killing and murder and kind of slashing, but I don't think of Fear Street when I think of pure, like, really gory slashers. But hey, you could make this vintage YA themed and read a whole bunch of old school YA, because there's also, like, Friday the 13th old school vintage YA books that are slasher themed that you could read too, and you could do a whole, like, vintage YA theme. But the official Christmas pick that I'm putting on here that seemed interesting was Slashing Through the Snow, a Christmas horror anthology published in 2016. It seemed like it'd be a good slasher for the holidays. Not necessarily for June, we're in summertime, but hey, it's something for you guys' radar when Christmas comes around. Or if you don't care about reading Christmas books in the summertime, go ahead and dig into it if you're so inclined and if you're intrigued by it. Here are some other anthologies that are non-seasonal, or also collections you could check out. First up, Slice and Dice. It's a collection of 4 slasher novellas. This was released last year in 2021. It features stories by Jeff Strand, Ian Wright, Jeff Manapace, I always say his name wrong, Manapace? I never say it right, and he's a popular author. Menapace. And finally, William Malmborg. So, I actually picked up the novella within the collection that was Jeff Strand's novella. So, this story is included in Slice and Dice. I don't think I'm going to have a chance to get to a whole collection. However, one little short story, standalone by itself, I think I can get to. And I just said I wanted to read more by Jeff Strand, so I probably will be reading this for my TBR in June. And it just seems like it's going to be fun. It's called 20th Anniversary Screening. Again, it's one of the stories within Slice and Dice. And this particular story is about...
This mockumentary-style dark comedy recounts the grisly events surrounding the terrible slasher flick, The Roofer, remembered only because an obsessed fan tried to reenact the murders as they played out on the screen. When the same theater shows the film 20 years later, will the warnings that this is a really, really bad idea be justified?
Again, it seems like it's very meta, and that is my jam. So yes, I really hope I can get to this in June. Alright, other anthologies you could check out. Summer Slasher Horror Anthology Volume 1, edited by Clay Anderson, released in 2021. This is also free with Kindle Unlimited. But I will say, someone in the Goodreads reviews said that there are only 1 or 2 slasher stories in this collection. So even though it's named Summer Slasher Horror Anthology, apparently only 1 or 2 stories are actually slasher stories. Next up, another anthology, Slash Her, a Woman of Horror anthology from this very year, 2022. This is really cool. There's a lot of horror women authors involved in this anthology, so this could be a great one to check out and support some women authors. Alright, and very quickly, here are 3 books that I've seen on multiple lists that, are slasher book lists. However, I'm not absolutely sure these are slasher books, so I'm putting them here, and if you guys have read them, please tell me, are they slasher books or not? The first one I'm going to mention, my friend Alex, the Bookubus, has read this and reviewed it on Goodreads. She said it's like a horror movie, but is it like a slasher movie in book form? I don't know. So this is Wait and See by Ruby Jean Jensen, published originally in 1986. Some people compared it to a slasher movie in the reviews about the book on Goodreads. Next up, Kin by Keelan Patrick Burke from 2011. This reminds me a lot of Off Season, which is about cannibals and a group of cannibals chasing after these people. So to me, that doesn't really fit the definition of a slasher. However, there are different definitions of what makes a slasher, both in book form and in movie form. And in fact, I had multiple chats with my friend Kat last year when we had our slasher watchathon. We didn't really read that many slashers, but we watched a lot. And then we discussed what makes a slasher movie, like what makes a movie a slasher. And we talked about all these articles and very academic, standards, like, what makes a slasher, and we totally just broke it all down. We sliced it up and dissected it. Haha, whatevs. Anyway, I'm gonna link those chats below if you guys are interested. And also, we reviewed a ton of slasher movies in general. We didn't just talk about the idea of slasher movies and what makes one a slasher. We just talked in general about specific slasher movies in addition to that too. So look below in the description if you are wondering what movies we discussed, because there are all kinds of different chats we had. So just to connect what I just said with what I'm talking about now, people have different criteria for what makes a slasher. So some of you might consider Kin a slasher book, while others might not. But I'm just going to mention it here just in case. Another supposed slasher book is After Midnight by Richard Lehman, published originally in 1997. Now, people have even said that Endless Night by Richard Lehman is a slasher book. I have read Endless Night. It was an amazing read for me. It was tense. It was exciting. Do I consider it a slasher book personally? No. There is more than one antagonist. There are numerous types of weapons used. I don't know. To me, it was just a great, thrilling horror book. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a, quote, slasher. However, other people have. It's on certain slasher lists, as is After Midnight by Richard Lehman. So, I don't know if that is true in that it's a slasher, but I'm gonna mention it here just in case. If you've read that, please let me know below, is it really a slasher type of book or not? And if you haven't read it but you want to, again, just go in knowing that it might not be a pure slasher according to certain people's standards. And finally, we're at the very end. I know this has been insanely long, but I hope you guys have found some great suggestions along the way and that you think that this is worth it. My very last suggestion is checking out some vintage, old school horror slasher books. Some of them are novelizations, others are like just kind of based in the movie universe, like this. This is a vintage YA series. It's Camp Crystal Lake is the series, and these were released in the 90s, and these are super, super rare. This is the only one out of the series that I have, and I wouldn't expect all of you guys to be able to find a copy. Again, they're not really available digitally in terms of on Kindle or anything, but fear not. There is a way to read these in a way. I say read. There's a way to listen to these. There is a fantastic YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is called the Trax Network with 80s Slasher Librarian. They have multiple playlists of audiobooks for all kinds of different old school slasher types of series of books that are not in print anymore. One of the series they have on audio is the Camp Crystal Lake series. They also have a complete playlist of unabridged A Nightmare on Elm Street audiobooks. They also have the Halloween novelizations on audio up on their YouTube channel. And they also have the Halloween YA series. There's 3 books in that series by Kelly O'Rourke, and those were released in the 90s. They have a whole playlist of those. So again, that is audiobook. You know, so if you don't like audiobooks, you might not be into that, but at least there's a way to listen to these books now, because it's very hard to find physical copies or copies that you could read with your eyes like I have here. This is the only one I have. So if you're into that type of thing, and that would really fit with the slasher vibe, because these are what we think of when we think of slashers. We think of Jason, we think of Freddy, we think of Michael Myers, you know, we think of Chucky. By the way, there are Chucky novelizations up on that YouTube channel where they have the audiobook versions of those. And it's the guys who run the channel who read the books. And I just think it's awesome. And a lot of times the authors do a little intro into the audiobook, like in the beginning of the video. They'll say, I'm the author, and you know, strap in. Anyway, it's really cool that they took the time to do this. They do have a Patreon, so you can support them if you like the idea of somebody trying to keep these books alive for new audiences to check out today. All right. Oh my God. I know. I'm sorry. That was long. You guys are exhausted. I'm exhausted, but hey, you know, sometimes you gotta get exhausted, whether it's fighting for your life against a freaking maniac slasher guy, or you're just making a YouTube video like me, or if you're watching it at home and you're like, oh, that took a while. Hopefully you guys had some snacks, had a drink nearby, and you could just relax and listen to some suggestions. I hope I covered a lot of slasher books that you may have heard of, and also some you may not have heard of, so that way you have a whole litany of choices to choose from when you're trying to make up your TBR if you're interested in participating in this readathon with me. Again, this is my readathon for June, and if you want to shout out that you're joining in on Instagram, use the hashtag slime summer slashers, all one word. Really going to be a good time, I think. I'm excited. I love slashers, whether it's in movie or book form. Just to say it once again, it's a bloody great time in my opinion. Alright guys, what do you think about slashers overall? Let me know. If I forgot any slasher books, comment any or all of that below. Remember to comment your book choices if you want to participate in the book club read, so that we can get the poll out there and get a book or 2 books chosen. Alright, for this time guys, that's it for me. Till next time, you know what you can do, and it's really appropriate for my slasher readathon. You can keep on killing it. Bye guys!